Hi, folks. My name is J.M. Erlinson. I'm a transformation engineering lead here at Software AG and a specialist in the ARIS product set. And today we're doing the Art of the Possible series, my thoughts on some best practices from the ARIS repository and how to manage your environment and how to be more successful with your ARIS toolset. Now, today we're going to be talking about something that my clients ask me all the time about. How do I properly portray my organizational elements in my database? What type of object do I use? Because I've got a couple of different things that I want to think about. So today we're going to talk about the difference between roles, positions, and people. For that, I'm going to navigate over to my organizational chart, open it up, and talk a little bit more about the kinds of things that I could find in my org chart. So these three types of objects are types of objects that are available in ARIS. Now, there are some variants of it. And there are some super role objects, like, for instance, organizational units that will encompass these things. But the question I get all the time is about role versus position versus person. And these three are very distinct, and there's a reason why you should be probably using role depending on what you're thinking about. Let's talk about what each one does and why it's relevant. And I'll get to role at the very end, because that's the one that's a little bit more nebulous, but really important when you look at putting things on process models. So internal person or person objects, and I can open up my details and you'll actually see this is a person type object. You can see in the brackets after type. A person type object is somebody who might be named. So that's me, J.M. Erlinson. Named as a person, an individual human being. Now, organizations want to use these because it seems pretty easy. You have a list of names of people that exist, and you can allocate those names of human beings to the tasks that you want them to do. A direct one-to-one allocation of workforce resources to work breakdown. Well, that becomes a big challenge because names move around. They might move between different organizational units. They might leave the company, meaning that you're ending up having to change that person all the time. You have to keep continuously updating who does what task. What if two people could do a task? Well, now you're allocating multiple people or person objects to every given task. What if it's only some of the time? Well, how do I know? How do we connect that together? A person is something that is perhaps the highest velocity of change, and while ARIS is very good at handling change and helping you to adapt, it doesn't always slot one-to-one. If, J.M. Erlinson were to leave and John Michael, my full name, were to come in instead, well, it wouldn't necessarily be a simple switch over here to switch this to John-Michael and see all the different places that John-Michael works while it is where J.M. Well, not necessarily. What if that person has a different skill set? So it's difficult to manage. And while it is the most obvious and very, very physical, you can see it, it's tangible, I wouldn't suggest using it unless absolutely necessary. And you can do it for small things, like, for instance, if you wanted to nominate people as part of groups, or if you wanted to nominate people in specific roles for governance within ARIS, that might be an okay thing to do, but generally, I wouldn't recommend that, particularly for tying into process models. And next gets into the dichotomy we find in so very many of the organizations we talk to, the difference between role and position. So let's start with positions. Positions are also a little more obvious. A position is a named title within the organization and the organizational structure. So for instance, this could be something like AP Clerk Level 3. That's a position. You probably have it in your human resource system that this person has this particular position allocated to them, might have compensation bands associated with it, might have reporting structures associated with it. It is a named position in your company. And so you start to allocate positions to the tasks they do. And everything's going well until you have a reorg. And so now all your positions might look different. You might be changing this one position, might become two different positions. One named one thing, one named a different thing. You might split up all your responsibilities. You might have some things entirely disappear, some things entirely reappear. That could wreak havoc on your process models, which are now tied directly to the named titles in your company and not really to what they do. So just like tying it to a person's name, you're going to experience a higher velocity of change and more effort maintaining these position objects in your library and ultimately on your process models. And the last one, what I would recommend you use, is the role object. And this could be like, this could be like a timesheet approver. Timesheet approver could be connected to any number of positions or any number of people. It is a role. It's a thing that you are capable of doing. Now, role position mapping is a pretty big thing that I would suggest potentially looking into at the organizational modeling side. That's actually a pretty handy thing to do. What does each of these positions, what roles do they occupy on your models? But using a role as a bridge between organization and process is very handy. Now, if you have organizational shift or evolution and change, it doesn't do anything to your process models. You actually still have a list of things that you still need done by somebody, and that will tie back into your positions, back into your org structure and people, and be able to connect everything in together. And so that's why I recommend to all of my clients to use these role objects. Now, of course, ARIS does have all the capacity to use any of those objects as you like, but as I said, I would suggest using role objects. Those are the handiest of all. And one of the things that I want to show as my tech tip of the day is that there is, in fact, a default report that helps you pull out information about roles. So for instance, this local dealership sales rep, you can see the report context. I'm gonna generate a job description for this particular person. I'll put a PDF of that, what they do. And what that's gonna do is that's gonna say this role, whoever occupies this role, or whichever positions, whichever people have to take this role, here are all the different places that they work, and when they're there, here are all the things they do, people they interact with, systems they have to use, all the different things that are going to be associated with that particular role. Super handy to have, and it's a nice big sort of PDF report that you can get out and pass on to learning and development, or you can pass on as part of your onboarding package. You could pass to your IT folks from a role authentication perspective to say, hey, here are all the systems that they need to have access to. Like this person needs to have access to Pro Order and be able to read calculation templates and car offers to calculate the credit. So we have a full information on the role authentication for that person and for that role, and that role now ties into positions and people that could be moving around, and that's fine. That can be handled in external systems or as an organizational design challenge. And that's why I say use role. That's my tech tip of the day, plus my art of the possible of the day. Once again, I'm J.M. Erlinson, and you're the listeners. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, all the different things you do on videos in general. Most importantly, providing feedback is really handy to me. Helps me figure out what you want and how I can make better videos for you in the future. It's a part of our series, The Art of the Possible, and we will see you in the next one.